You're listening to Experience Imagination, a themed entertainment design podcast presented by Falcon's Creative Group. Every episode, we discuss a new topic with a panel of creative professionals. Hi, I'm Cecil McPuri, President and Chief Creative Officer of Falcons.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Imagination. I'm your host, Audrey DeLong. Today's topic is one of those subjects that is so vast, it could take up many hours worth of podcasting, but we're going to try to do our best to condense it into a tidy, easily digestible bit. I'm talking about the Metaverse. If you read the science fiction novel Snow Crash back when it was published in 1992, you came across that term for the very first time. Since then, games and movies have given us vivid depictions of the metaverse. There are so many ways that everyday people may come to experience the metaverse in the future. In this episode, we'll talk about just a few of them. In the queue is a conversation with Steve Couture, a successful entrepreneur in the entertainment business. He spent more than 15 years as CEO of Freema, a video game company he co-founded. And then he turned his attention to animated children's series that have huge branding potential. He does that work through Epic Storyworlds, a Canadian company he co-founded with Ken Fair, and where he serves as CEO. I'll speak with two brilliant minds from Kids Industries, Creative Director Raj Pathmanathan and Strategy Director Yelena Stashish. Kids Industries is the world's only full-service strategy and activation agency that specializes in the global family market. First, though, let's bring in our Vice President of Technology, Saham Ali, and Jason Ambler, President of Digital Media. Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
All right, so you both have a lot of knowledge in this area, but I want to start with Saham. I'm looking to you to help our listeners get a very high-level explanation of what the metaverse is.
I like to consider it the next evolution of the internet. The term itself is really thrown around very loosely. We've seen people saying, oh, it's just virtual reality and interconnected worlds, and it's going to be this and that. But the reality is it's going to be things that are going to be both digital in the internet, physical in reality, augmented reality, and the persistence of a world that encompasses all those dimensions.
All right, Jason?
What we're seeing now is some semblance of what the metaverse could be, but a lot of them are essentially islands in of themselves. We haven't seen how those will all start to communicate and talk together and work together across different platforms and softwares.
And it's a culmination of technologies. And that's kind of it. It's like some people are on the blockchain. Some people are using blockchain to make NFTs. Some people are wanting to leverage those technologies for the persistence of identity. And it's going to be a culmination, a stack of technologies that takes you to the metaverse.
How close is it to something like Ready Player One or The Matrix?
That's where I think Hollywood has done a really good job into people thinking it's going to be a fabricated digital world. It is going to be more than just that. I mean, you could say Ready Player One is Roblox or Minecraft, or that's just the world you live in. But the idea really is, in Metaverse, is going to be that, and it's going to also follow you into the real world, where you go to an attraction or a theme park or even your movie theater and get to engage with things that are digital in the physical space. They're not just in a VR headset.
Right.
The key here is going back to the idea of it's a whole new philosophy on how people interact with the internet. Mm-hmm. And that's Web3, as they have deemed it now. And part of Web3 is the idea of the decentralization of where you own your identity and the things associated with you, right? It's not owned by Facebook. It's not owned by Twitter. But the metaverse may expand to Roblox, may expand to Facebook. I mean, obviously, they're taking steps to that now. And it's really about all these different interfaces connecting back to your digital identity. So whether you're playing a game, whether you're making a purchase, whether you're interacting at a retail store, that can all be filtered through your digital identity. And that ultimately becomes what the metaverse is and what you're tapping into.
So the decentralization sounds like one big part that's making it a game changer. What else makes it such a game changer?
Anything can tap into the metaverse, whether that be your Amazon Alexa or your refrigerator at home or anything, really.
They're all parts to it.
And, you know, when you talk about ownership of personal goods and selling and buying and selling, that's where the DRM comes into play, right? And that's something that the music industry had to do to prevent piracy.
And DRM is digital rights management, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Part of this movement is about protecting individual ownership.
Yes.
In theory, all software and subscriptions as well.
Banking people want to get into it, and
For sure.
and sourcing materials from throughout the world, like supply chain logistics, they want to get into it. Healthcare wants to get into it.
Is this one of those things where if someone isn't like tech savvy, it doesn't want to be included in this? Can they just like totally opt out and go about their lives?
I'm going to say it's going to be under the hood, going to be part of your life no matter what. You are going to want to create an account in the same way that we most all have social security numbers. You are going to have some identification number that transcends any one website. You will log in with this identity, and the bulk of all internet transactions will be able to look you up based off this ID, whichever website you go to.
Yeah.
And it is your ID.
It's kind of like your IP address.
It is yours.
Like
and
you know it's there, but you're not really paying attention to it.
That's
You don't give
right.
it another thought.
Yep.
So how is Falcons using its own knowledge of technology in the metaverse and leveraging that to create experiences for our clients? Like, are we going to create our own metaverse?
I would say it's a UI into the metaverse, right? Because ultimately, when we talk about the metaverse not being something that can be directly owned by anybody, we are just creating a new interface to interact with the metaverse, right? The idea that you can customize and personalize and individualize your experience based off of your personal preferences is really unique in themed entertainment for sure. And then beyond that, how can we take the themed entertainment experience home with us? Continue it. Those are the things that we're exploring with our connection into the metaverse.
All right. Well, this was a great conversation. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
We are here with co-founder of Epic Storyworlds, Steve Couture. He's calling in from Quebec City. Thanks so much for being here, Steve.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start by walking everyone through the role that Epic Storyworlds has in creating children's content and what that has to do with the metaverse.
The reason why we founded the Epic Storyworlds with Ken Fair is to create kids content and kids franchise. It's not just about creating linear content for television, but more to create brands for kids. We talk about toys, we talk about doing merchandising, video games, and virtual universe for kids. So that's how we finally address the concept of metaverse in our business model. So to catch the attention of the kids around our IP from different doors. So that's the idea of our business model, and this is what brings us to what we call today the metaverse.
And you talked about branding. I did want to touch upon this. When you say a show has good branding potential, what specifically does that mean? And how could that play a part, a big role, in fact, in the metaverse?
Our perspective for kids content is, yes, we can create good TV show that can have a great reach without being really a brand. For us, the brand perspective is when you can have a TV show that goes further from the television. So being able to make toys, being able to make live events, book publishing, and everywhere you can bring your brand, your universe, your character on different verticals. When we're starting our first development phase, we have around the table someone from merchandising, but also from video games, from marketing also for sure. So for us, it's an integrated process.
I'm glad you mentioned games, Steve, because we have to talk about Roblox. It's hugely popular. It feels like it was an overnight sensation, although it really wasn't. But talk about Roblox. First of all, what is it?
Roblox, they built that initially for the kids to have a creative environment where they can play together and create games together. So since the beginning, all the foundation of Roblox are based on user-generated content. So from kids that create themselves the content. So it's easy to use the platform to create some simple game mechanic and having thousands of players on it. So their platform is really mature. And it's there to help kids create their own content and bring their friends playing with them.
Yeah, and I'm curious, what is Epic Storyworlds doing with the Roblox platform?
For us, it's a natural position to take on the market because if you're creating today a mobile game around a new IP that you're creating, the discoverability on the stores, on the Google Play Store, on the App Store, it will be really challenging because you're putting a game on a store beside a huge and known franchise. And the way to market it, it's expensive. Roblox, this is where kids are right now for different reasons. And the cost to generate an audience is way lower than everything you see right now on the other technologies.
So how many games are on Roblox right now about?
We talk about millions because the kids have created a lot of content since the last couple of years. The important reason why the kids are there is the fact that you can browse in different games in a really frictionless way on a mobile device. Usually when you're a kid under 13-year-old, it requires to download it through the process of the parental approval. On Roblox, kids can download the game. You don't need to care that much about being safe for kids, so it's already COPPA compliant. Over a few seconds, you download the new game and you enter on it, you play on it with your same avatar and virtual self that you already created in another game or in the Roblox environment. So you keep your virtual identity from a game to another, and you browse from a game to another really in a frictionless way. The kids want to socialize. They want to play together and have a virtual identity in this kind of worlds.
One of the things we wanted to get into is the metaverse for children. Roblox is the metaverse for children. And what makes it a metaverse, you're saying, is the community, the interaction with others. You can buy things for your avatar, like the dance moves or the hat or the clothing, and other people see that. So what other aspects of the metaverse are seen within these Roblox games?
Technically, Roblox have been created around a really strong customizable avatar system. There's no kids that call Roblox a metaverse, so it's not a thing for the kids, so it's the adults like us that see the trends that we call metaverse. But what makes it a concept that is really close to the metaverse thinker right now is the fact that you have a single virtual identity with your account and your avatar. And you're traveling from a virtual world to another, bringing with you this virtual identity. With what you gain from another game, from the specific outfits or Robux that you acquired in different games. So that's the big reason why it's the metaverse for kids. They spend so much time to bring it to the level that they want in terms of customization and how you present yourself virtually. It will be really difficult to take them and bring them to another universe because they're so invested in Roblox and their Roblox identity.
That's right. So you talked about the virtual space, having a virtual world. I just want to make this clarification point for the listeners. Is a virtual world the same thing as a metaverse and vice versa?
There's different definition when you look at what is a metaverse, but the fact that we use the word meta means it's interconnected virtual worlds. So like in Roblox, when you're on a game, you play with a tank game, you are in a virtual world of tank. Then with your same avatar, you go to another virtual world. With the same virtual identity, you go from a virtual world to another. But some definition could be a little bit different. So it's not totally clear where we can trace the line between a metaverse and a virtual world. I see it as a succession of virtual worlds that you connect through with a single virtual identity.
The currency in Roblox is called Robux. Clever. Yep. Is that a form of digital currency or is it cryptocurrency?
It's digital currency. I don't see it as a cryptocurrency at all. So it's really a virtual currency that you can convert to real money. So when you have enough Robux that you can cash out, I think the minimum is $350. So when you can cash out $350, you can transform it to real money. And also you can buy gift certificate card that you can find on retail store. Mm-hmm. So you buy these and you enter the specific code to Roblox and then you transform real money into virtual currency. So it's way closer to the traditional virtual currency that you will find in free-to-play games.
Gotcha. I know you've done a lot of research as far as your role at Epic Storyworlds is concerned with Roblox. What was your first impression when you started playing Roblox games?
if I may give a little advice for any grown-up like me, when you enter into this for the first time, the first game that you'll play, you're going to see horrible UI and UX. When you played a lot of video game, you go to Roblox and you don't really easily understand why kids are there like crazy. So I think that to understand the platform, you need to spend a lot of time into it. And one of my personal wow moment in Roblox is when I start looking at it, I look at a game that was quite popular, and I was seeing a lot of hundreds of kids playing together. And I felt it was boring, and I didn't see why. And I replayed this game like 4 months after, and now it's one of my favorite games. And I play with the kids, and they're all running, and we're all running as a group and try to avoid a big catastrophe that happened. And I really have fun. And now I have a better sense of how kids are playing as a community in this kind of universe. But it took me time to understand it.
Well, Steve, this has been really fun talking to you about this. Maybe we'll speak again in the future after Epic Storyworlds gets some more games up on Roblox. I'd love that.
Yeah, great. So it was a pleasure.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to welcome Raj Pathmanathan and Yelena Stasic from Kids Industries. How are you guys?
Pretty good. It's this beautiful spring day. We're embracing it.
Nice.
London's got a bit of a heat wave, so yeah, it's nice to be in London.
Oh, that's perfect. Sounds nice. I'm a little jealous. All right, so before we get too deep into the metaverse, I want to ask you both, we'll start with Yelena, about something I saw on the Kids Industries website about connecting human emotions with market intelligence. Explain the thinking behind that statement.
Fundamentally, we are an audience-led company. We believe that brands serve their audience, and working with children, we think that's even more important, and that's a value that's really close to our heart. So for that reason, we wanted to define our jobs, our mission, as being there to connect brands better, or not brands, companies of different kinds, could be charities, to these human needs, to their emotions, empathize with our users, and really go in very deeply in understanding and feeling what they're feeling. And so that's the kind of emotions and human emotions. And then the brand and market intelligence is we do live in a world dictated by market realities. And as such, we need to merge those two into a solution. What that means for us is that when we hire, we look for different skill sets. It might be economists and business people and marketing people for the market intelligence side of things, but also psychologists, educators, talented moderators to help us connect to the human intelligence.
That's great. Raj, did you have anything to add to that?
Our mission is to make sure there's a clear value exchange that happens between the audience and the brand. And what we bring is we know, as Yelena mentioned, the audience. We feel like we're foremost. We've been doing it for the last 20 years. We do regular work, so we have a strong understanding of the audience.
Okay, so I want to get into forms of entertainment. So gaming, we know, far eclipses other forms of entertainment, movies, television, whatnot, especially for kids. Why is that?
It's play, fundamentally. At best, it's active, it's social, it's immersive, and it's getting more and more so as the technology allows us to be. Just the other day, I read a stat which said approximately 60 billion messages are sent daily on Roblox. That's a huge amount of messaging. And having these spaces which are social spaces, which allow you a moment of escapism and a moment of interaction with your friends in a way that watching a movie or listening to music kind of doesn't, is the role that gaming plays in kids' lives. It needs to be imaginative, it needs to be self-chosen, self-directed, has some rules. Gaming fits really well into that definition, and I think children and grown-ups, we are all in desperate need of play.
For sure.
The great quote that we always use is, "Play is the work of the child," which is Maria Montessori's quote. And it's what children really rely on to learn. And gaming has that abundance, which stretches also across any ages. So I think it's a natural fit.
How do you see the forms of communication in games these days taking shape over the next few years? Do you think it's going to change, elevate any?
There will be some kind of a higher level of immersion, especially in avatar-based games, which again, they're not all games. Not every gaming universe is a sandbox, is that kind of second life experience. But I think in the avatar-based ones, making that even more connected to who you are somehow will be taking place. And there might be incremental gains of further edits or the technology being able to mirror your facial expression or your movement more closely to get that communication a bit more immersive. As a lot of these things, it will have a good side and a bad side, and a lot of moderation that needs to take place. But I do expect we'll see a lot more of that. I mean, we already see when players are allowed to interact physically and to communicate with each other, things get a bit weird. And if you have a children audience, you can't allow things to get a bit weird. So we'll see how that keeps growing and what companies start setting up both opportunities to communicate, but also opportunities to moderate and manage this.
Yes, definitely. Go ahead, Raj.
I think the next step, and we're seeing technology slowly coming, is the haptic, which I think that would be really interesting, having bodysuits or gloves that you could actually feel and touch what you're playing and what you're doing. Because Xbox Connect, when that came out, which is crazy, a few years ago, you had facial recognition. It could do face movements, eyes. So you were able to do that for a while. But I think what's really interesting now is the blurring of reality where people are expecting more. Now I feel like I'm in a world I should be able to touch, smell, do everything else. I don't know what that means for kids, but that's definitely interesting space where the virtual space is going into.
That sounds really cool. How does kids' industries play in the metaverse space?
For a lot of our clients, they're still at an early stage of understanding the metaverse. And in many respects, the metaverse itself is in the early stages of being defined and built as we go along. So for us, our remit so far has been gentle steps in helping our clients understand what is this space, can you play within it, what can and what should you do. Just because it's there, it's not right for everyone, but there are a few clients that we've had that actually are making great strides.
We do have a very strong background in user experience. So we are helping clients understand how does that fit into their whole ecosystem. So just because kids are there does not mean that's best suited for their brand, but that could be part of the journey that works together.
I love that. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see just in general where the metaverse goes and where all of these technologies take us.
It's one of those things, I think, in the agency, we try not to use metaverse because it's such a big, what does it mean? Like, is there a clear definition? I think everyone has different definition. Like for me, it's mirroring something of the real world with a lot more freedom. So if that is currency, if that is socialization, if that's creativity, if that's a universe, physical universe. But for different people, it could be a completely different thing. So I think it's quite a big term being used. But I think what is definite for children is most of them, that's where they start to know the real world. For them, that is internet, because that might be a safeguard and the parents might allow them to go. They might be allowed to go on Roblox, but not on the rest of the internet on a browser. But Roblox, in theory, you could access brands, you could access information, you could access different socialization. So that might become the internet environment for them, which I think is a more interesting space for children coming in.
I could see that. There's a lot of things that people can do in games. Like we talked about, they can world build, beat a level, talk to their friends and communicate in this community. But the other thing they can do is spend money. And I know Kids Industries has looked into this in great detail. What do they buy?
The same way they buy clothes in normal life, they buy skins in gaming life. But skins are more than clothes, aren't they? They are superpowers, they are tricks, they are access. So we did a quant research looking at children and young people gamers just to understand the drivers towards purchase, the economics, the needs behind their purchase. And we found that the needs serve very similar reasons to why you would buy stuff in real life. It's to present yourself in a certain life, to do better in a certain way.
I'm wondering if the spending graph or chart, however you look at it, does that change the older someone gets?
It does, but it changes in an unexpected direction. I imagine that asking a lot of people before we did a study of who do you think spend more in games, younger children or older ones? I think people would assume that around the age of 12, 13, when children actually have access to more money, they might spend more, but it's actually not the case. So looking at average spend over sort of 3 months period, we had 6 to 8 year olds spending the most, actually. So over 3 months, it was around 34 British pounds, going down for 9 to 11, and then going as low as 25 pounds for the 12 to 13-year-olds. And finally, the older you get, the more likely you are to pay for everything you do yourself. So when children are that kind of 6 to 8-year-old, for approximately a quarter of them, parents are kind of saying, you will pay for this yourself out of your pocket money. 75% of the time, the parents are paying. And it gets closer to half and half for those teenagers. Parents are actually asking them to fund their own hobbies and entertainment, which I think is partly also why they are spending a bit less. They have to foot the bill.
All right. So Raj and Yelena, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Right. And thank you so much for having us. Such a pleasure.
Thank you for having us. It's always a great discussion talking about Metaverse. So thank you.
So welcome back, Saham and Jason. This is such a broad topic, Metaverse, right? So first of all, what are your impressions of what Steve, Raj, and Yelena discussed? Jason?
They kind of also are in the same position as this is all kind of a new idea. Mm-hmm. And we're leveraging existing platforms like Roblox was mentioned. But really, this is very, very expansive and probably going to be tied into how we're going to see the future of the internet and communication. Really, I think about the boon of what social media was in the last 15 years. And so when we're talking about Metaverse, it is really going to be how we are engaging with each other and communicating with each other.
Yeah, that number that Yelena threw out about how many messages are sent through Roblox every day.
60 billion.
Billion.
Yeah, Jason brings up a good point. I mean, we saw that crazy influx in connectivity when social media came around, and Steve, Yelena, and Raj, they have a very guided interest in connecting people to brands, and they want to do it in a very intelligent manner. And we can see that, Metaverse is very broad. There's a lot of different ways to engage, whether it's games or AR or even corporations with their digital twins. Everyone has a different perception of what the metaverse will be, but ultimately it's going to be how we connect with and work on the internet in the next generation.
Yeah, the guests what we had on this episode, just tremendous people, subject matter experts in this area, and really they understand this market. I'm really glad we were able to have them on.
Yeah, for sure. They added a lot, and that brings me to thanking them. That was Steve Couture, Raj Pathmanathan, and Yelena Stasic. All right, Saham and Jason, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for doing the closing with me.
Absolutely, it was fun.
Yeah, great topic.
And thank you all so much for listening. Please join us again next time for another episode of Experience Imagination.
Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. To keep up with our latest news, visit us on the web at falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please email us at podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.